Flames licked the edge of the barn's crumbling timbers, turning night into an inferno of crackling wood and shadowed faces. A single rifle crack split the silence, sharp as a betrayed man's vow, then another and another until the valley trembled with echoes of retribution. Cold wind carried the scent of fear and burning oil, racing across snow-blinded fields, where loyalty and vengeance stood poised on opposite sides of a smoking ruin. In that moment, every heart in town knew one truth: nothing would ever be the same. Somewhere beyond the blazing horizon, secrets smoldered beneath layers of snow and sorrow, waiting for someone brave enough and broken enough to set them free. The sun hovered low over the snow-frosted plains of western Montana, its pale light shimmering off the iron rims of wagon wheels as Claire Bennett's coach creaked along the frozen trail. Inside, Claire sat wrapped in a thick wool cloak, her breath pluming in the frigid air. Each crunch of hoof against hard-packed snow echoed like a warning, striking a rhythm of unease in her chest. Only days ago, she had escaped the scorn of Boston society, determined to start anew in a frontier settlement called Alder Creek. But the West, she'd soon learn, held dangers far sharper than whispers behind fanfold fans. A sudden crack in the dusk air jolted her from reverie. Beyond the coach's small window, two figures emerged from the tree line, broad-shouldered men draped in soot-dark cloaks, one brandishing a gleaming saber. Horses reared flanks, steaming in the icy wind. Claire's heart pounded as the first bandit leapt forward with inhuman speed, blade raised. The driver slammed on the brake chains, the wheels ground to a halt, and the horses reared, shedding snow like angry ghosts. Claire froze as the bandits flanked the coach. "Stand and hand over your valuables." The taller one snarled, voice low and crackling with menace. Ice crystallized on his mustache. Panic fluttered in Claire's chest. Her hands shook on the seat's side rail. She fumbled for the small leather satchel at her feet, clutching it to her chest as if it were the only thing keeping her tethered to hope. Just a moment, the driver shouted, swinging open the coach door. In that instant, another figure charged out of the gathering shadow. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair brushed back from a square jaw, rushing toward the fray. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced death at least once and won. In his right hand gleamed a long, sturdy riding crop. In his left, a coil of rope. The bandits hesitated, surprise rippling through their ranks. "You picked the wrong coach to rob the stranger," called Boots, crunching through the snow. He vaulted onto the nearest horse's rump, swinging his crop like a rodeo rider. The horse snorted, shifting weight, but remained steadfast under his command. Then with a swift flick, the stranger lashed the drop rope around the taller bandit's midsection, yanking him off balance. The man crashed into the snow, wind knocked out of him. His blade clattered across the ice. The second bandit lunged at the stranger with savage ferocity. Wolfish eyes glowed beneath a battered bowler. The stranger's hand shot for a hidden hammer hook strapped to his belt, a tool for saddle repair turned weapon in these wildlands. He parried the blade, twisting his wrist and sending the attacker sprawling. Snow exploded around them in powdery clouds, each movement slow-motion, brutal and enthralling. Claire felt her pulse race as if recording each swing in her mind. Moments later, the stranger stood victorious atop the coach's steps, catching his breath in steady puffs. The two bandits lay groaning, bound by rope to a broken sled runner. He offered a gloved hand to Claire. "Are you all right, miss?" His voice was low and steady, like distant thunder calmed by resolve. Beneath the soot smudging his cheek, a gentleness softened the lines around his eyes. I think so." Claire managed, her voice trembling. She placed her hand in his. His grip was warm, grounding. He guided her from the coach, wrapping a spare blanket around her shoulders. "I'm Luke Carson," he said, tipping a battered hat to her. "Rode in from the Caldwell Ranch 10 miles east. Heard shouting and came to investigate." Claire blinked against the wind, gathering composure. "Thank you, Mr. Carson. I'm Claire Bennett. I'm bound for Alder Creek." She swallowed. "I've never been so grateful." Luke nodded, his gaze sweeping the horizon. "The frontier can be harsh," he said. "Folks out here try to survive by any means. Let's get you somewhere warm before night fully settles." While the bandits lay groaning, Luke signaled his own horsemen, 3 riders who had trailed him, now closing rank. They disarmed the 2 men and tied them securely. Then in a practice motion, they reloaded their rifles just in case more trouble loomed beyond the ridge. Luke and Claire climbed into a sturdy wagon, its sides emblazoned with Redwood Inn in faded letters. The driver, a stout woman with streaks of silver in her dark hair, called out a greeting as they approached. "That's you, Luke. You bring a guest. Just in time, Martha," he replied. "Help me get her inside." Martha pulled down the curtain and opened the rear door of the inn's private coach extension, motioning Claire to step in. Claire's cheeks burned from both cold and adrenaline. She placed a trembling hand on the carved wooden doorframe. "It's been eventful," she managed, glancing back at the dark trail. Martha smiled kindly, ushering her in. "We'll sort things out in the morning. For now, warm stew and a soft bed await. Name's Martha Jennings. You must be the new schoolmistress." Martha's tone was gentle but authoritative, a protective matriarch for all who sought shelter. Claire's breath steadied as she closed the door behind her. Inside the parlor of Redwood Inn glowed with a crackling hearth, the scent of pine-smoked stew and baking bread hugging her senses like a welcome embrace. Adorned with quilted drapes and polished oak tables, the room radiated a comforting hush, an oasis after her harrowing ride. Luke followed, tossing the reins to one of his riders. "I'll check in on you later," he said softly to Claire, concern flickering in his eyes. He nodded to Martha. "Take care of her, will you? She's far from home." "You have my word," Martha replied, her eyes warm. "Come sit by the fire. Let your shoulders down." Claire sank into a high-backed chair near the hearth, the crackling flames reflecting in her wide eyes. Her satchel lay beside her, still clutched against her calf, a lifeline containing all she owned. She buttoned her gloves, slowly exhaling a shaky laugh. "All I wanted was a fresh start," she whispered. "Never imagined it would begin like this." Martha bustled to a sideboard and ladled steaming stew into a heavy bowl. "Funny how life surprises you," she said, setting it before Claire. "Here's to new beginnings, sometimes born of chaos." As Claire wrapped her gloved hands around the bowl, her gaze drifted to the inn's window. Beyond, the moon hung like a silent sentinel over the silent snow-draped landscape. In that moment, she felt both small and infinite, cast adrift from her old world, yet drawn into a new one, alive with possibility, danger, and unexpected heroes. And thus, under the pale Montana moon, Claire Bennett took her first true breath of frontier air. The path ahead promised perils untold, but also the chance to carve her own destiny far from the shadows that once defined her. The fire in the hearth and the steadfast presence of Luke Carson offered a fragile beacon, one she resolved to follow into the unknown. Claire awoke before dawn, the first gray light seeping through the frosted window panes of her chamber at Redwood Inn. The hut-shaped beams overhead bore a thin dusting of snow that had drifted in through a cracked eave, and the steady hiss of a dying ember in the corner stove underlined the hush. She dressed quickly, stout boots, wool skirt, thick blouse, and descended the creaking stair to the parlor, where Martha Jennings was already stoking the fire. "Morning," Martha greeted, her voice low. "Reckon you slept after last night's excitement." Claire nodded, massaging her temples. She perched on a stool by the hearth. "Thank you for everything. I could use directions to town." Martha set a steaming mug of coffee before her. "Ardon's Creek lies half a mile down the road. Head past the Mercantile and you'll see the schoolhouse on your left. If you aim for Luke's Ranch Road, you can't miss it." Claire sipped the warmth coursing through her. "Luke Carson. He saved me from those bandits." Martha's eyes softened. "That be Luke. Quiet sort, but fierce as a grizzly when riled. He runs Carson's Saddle and Tack just outside of town. You'll find he's good people." Outside, the wind wailed against the walls. Claire pulled her shawl tighter. "I was hired to teach. I have letters of recommendation in Boston, but no school board here in the frontier." "How do I find the headmaster?" Martha pointed across the street. "See the tall, white clapboard building? That's the schoolhouse. Mr. Thompson's stable is beside it. He's the acting headmaster. He'll want references before you start." Claire drank her coffee in contemplative sips, then rose. "I'll go straight away." Snow crunched underfoot as Claire stepped into the early morning. The main street lay deserted, boarded walkways flanked by modest wooden buildings. The general store, the livery stable, the Black Bear Saloon. Wreaths of pine branches hung over shop doors, silent tokens of goodwill in a land where warmth was scarce. She passed a pair of burly ranch hands hitching horses at Thompson's livery. One tipped his hat. "Morning, miss," he rumbled. Claire returned the greeting nervously and continued on. The schoolhouse doors stood wide, a small plume of smoke curling from its chimney. A carved sign read Alder Creek School District Number 7. Stepping inside, Claire found a loft-style room with rows of rough-hewn desks. The walls bore a few faded maps and a chalkboard scribbled with arithmetic. At the front, a man in suspenders and a wool cap folded a ledger. His gray hair haloed the lamplight like a crown of frost. "You must be Miss Bennett," he said without looking up. His voice was clipped but not unkind. "I'm Harold Thompson. I understand you've credentials from Boston." Claire produced the envelope of letters, extending it with gloved hands. "Yes, sir. I taught at the Boston Common School for 2 years." Thompson scanned the first letter, then the second, nodding. "Impressive. We've lacked a permanent teacher since Miss Caldwell left last spring." He tapped the ledger. "Budget's tight, but the town needs education. I'll recommend you. You can start Monday." Relief and excitement mingled in Claire's chest. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I was worried the frontier might not value my experience." Thompson folded the letters and set them on his desk. "Out here, the ability to read, write, and reckon numbers is gold. Folks appreciate a teacher who can light minds, not just candles." Claire managed a smile. "I'll do my best." As she turned to leave, Thompson added, "Miss Bennett, be mindful of strange folk. This settlement is friendly, but rumor and prejudice can sour hearts. If anyone bothers you, come straight to me." Claire inclined her head gravely. "I will." Back at Redwood Inn, Claire deposited her satchel in a small guest alcove. The parlor was now bustling travelers, sipping coffee, a couple of homesteaders exchanging news. Martha appeared, handing Claire a steaming bowl of porridge. "You look sharper now," Martha said. "Plans to see the town?" Claire scooped the oats with a grateful thank you, then added, "I want to meet the townsfolk, maybe find a room near the school." Martha shook her head. "You're welcome here as long as you need. Cots fill quick once winter thaws. If you start teaching, Monday might stay put." "Breakfast for teachers is free." Claire's eyes brightened. "That is a generous offer." Martha winked. "Consider Redwood Inn an extension of your home. Folks come, folks go. Your safety's my business." Outside, the wind had eased to a gentle hiss. Claire bundled up and ventured out again, this time seeking Luke Carson's tack shop. It lay a quarter-mile east on the Carson Road, a sturdy plank building with a painted sign of intertwined saddle and bridle. Snowdrifts partially blocked the entrance. Claire shoved the door open to a gust of warm air and the smell of leather. Inside, glimmers of dark brown hide and brass buckles lined shelves. At a bench strewn with tools, hunks of raw hide, a man hammered rivets. She recognized him immediately, Luke Carson. His broad shoulders were bent over the saddle, but he looked up at her arrival with surprised eyes. He set the hammer aside. "Miss Bennett fancies seeing you here." Claire's cheeks warmed. "Mr. Carson, thank you again for last night. I thought you'd gone back to the ranch." He shrugged, wiping sweat from his brow. "Was passing by. Saw the coach. Figured trouble was afoot." He gestured to a stool. "Sit for a moment." Claire perched and swept a stray curl from her cheek. "I wanted to say I'm teaching at the schoolhouse. Mr. Thompson gave me the job." Luke's face brightened. "Congratulations. Alder Creek needs a good schoolmarm." He studied her expression. "You settling in?" Claire set down her gloves. "I am. Redwood Inn's my base, but I thought I might board near the school, easier commute." Luke frowned at the workbench. "If you need a room closer, my folks have a spare loft above the workshop. They live next door. Might be more convenient." Claire blinked. "That's extremely kind, but I—" Luke shook his head decisively. "My ma loves having someone in less lonely, and you'd get first pick of the apples in our cellar come summer." Claire laughed. "That is tempting." Behind them, steel buckles clinked as a ranch hand swung open the back door. "Luke, there's talk of a wolf pack near the East Ridge. Could be dangerous for travelers." Luke nodded. "I'll look into it. Miss Bennett, promise me you won't travel alone at dusk." Claire met his steady gaze. "I promise." That afternoon, Claire toured the mercantile. Canned provisions, cloth bolts, coffee beans in burlap sacks, all stacked high. The clerk, a round-faced woman with spectacles, sold her textbooks, writing supplies, and a slate board in exchange for a small bag of coins. As Claire exited, the distant howl of wolves pierced the still air, sharp, mournful, and insistent. A shiver darted down her spine. She pulled her shawl tighter, recalling Mr. Thompson's warning and Luke's concern. Snowfields stretched toward tree lines that concealed more than game. They hid predators unlikely to respect human settlements. Claire trudged back across the wooden sidewalks toward Redwood Inn, her mind shifting between lesson plans and the wolves' lament. A sense of foreboding rode the wind, whispering of untamed forces that shaped this raw landscape, nature's danger intersecting with human grudges. Just as she neared the inn's porch, a sudden dent in the air made her whirl. Through the drifting snow, a dark silhouette skulked along the boundary of pine trees. She registered quick movement, an arm rising with a glint of metal. Fear flared an intruder. "Hey," she called, voice brimming with authority despite her pounding heart. "Who's there?" No answer, just the soft imprint of footprints swirling in the snow. Claire's pulse thundered. Should she call for help? Should she hide inside? The wind whipped her skirts as she hesitated. Then a deep voice rang behind her. "Claire." "In here, Luke." Carson burst from the inside door, rifle in hand. He motioned her inside with urgent gestures. Relief catapulted through Claire. She turned and fled for the door Luke closed behind. Once inside, Luke bolted the door and set the rifle aside. His chest heaved. "Whoever that was, they had a knife. I heard you call." Claire's legs trembled. "I thought someone was attacking." Luke crossed to the window and peered into the swirling dusk. Wolves, perhaps, or someone else. He returned to her side, heart pounding. "You need protection until you know who it is." Claire swallowed. Her hands shook on the wooden table. "Thank you, Luke. I I may take that spare loft." Luke exhaled, relief and resolve mingling in his eyes. "Good. I'll let my ma know." He reached for her hand. "Rest by the fire tonight. I'll stand guard." Claire nodded, grateful for his unwavering vigilance. The wolves howled again, a tangled cord of wild sorrow, underscoring the frontier's dual nature, breathtakingly beautiful yet fiercely unforgiving. And so nestled within the sturdy walls of Redwood Inn, with a loyal sentinel at her side, Claire Bennett braced herself for the next chapter of her new life in Alder Creek. Danger prowled beyond its lamplit windows, but here in the hearth's glow and the company of friends, she found the courage to face whatever lay ahead. It was the third night of Claire Bennett's arrival in Alder Creek when the hush of late winter was shattered by urgent knocking at her loft door. She sat at a simple pine desk, grading slates and rehearsing lesson structures for her first day. The soft glow of an oil lamp cast wavering shadows on cracked plaster walls. Outside, wind gusted against the window pane, rattling it like a restless heart. "Miss Bennett, it's me, Mr. Thompson," came the headmaster's breathless voice through the transom. Claire rose, heart fluttering. She crossed the narrow chamber and opened the door to find Harold Thompson, cap in hand, cheeks flushed from cold. "Mr. Thompson, forgive me. I thought everyone had retired for the night." Claire stepped aside. He ducked in boots, crunching on straw scattered across the floor. "I apologize for disturbing you, but news just arrived by rider." He fumbled in his coat pocket, producing a folded dispatch. "There's been an accident at the Carson Ranch. Luke's father suffered a broken leg, fell from a runaway colt. He's stable, but they need someone at the inn to cover the tack shop and keep an eye on Miss Bennett." Claire's pulse sharpened. "Of course, send riders back for me. I'll be there at once." Thompson shook his head. "It's too late and too dangerous in this storm. I'll stand guard, but I wanted you to know you can rely on me and on Luke's family. Be cautious, Miss Bennett. The town is small, word travels fast. If you need anything, come to the schoolhouse." Claire managed a nod. "Thank you, sir. I'll stay here. Please rest. Teaching preparations can wait." He offered a stiff bow and swept back into the night. Claire closed the door, bolted it, and exhaled. The storm rattled overhead like a chorus of gravel. She gathered her heavy cloak, lantern, and mittens, then slipped out into the corridor. The inn's common room glowed with lamplight and low conversation. Martha Jennings stood behind a counter, pouring tea for two ranch hands. She glanced up as Claire entered, concern flickering. "Luke's father, you heard," Claire nodded. "Mr. Carson's out. I'll mind the shop until morning." Martha set the teapot aside. "You've braved worse already. I'll give you a lantern and the spare key. Stay near the door. I'll circle back once I've seen to dinner." Claire accepted the lantern gratefully. The scent of stew and freshly baked cornbread rose from the kitchen. She lingered by the hearth, drawing comfort from the flames. A roar thundered beyond the walls, horse hooves on wet planks. Moments later, the heavy oak door swung wide. A lanky figure in a threadbare overcoat skidded inside Luke Carson, mud-caked and wide-eyed. He stumbled to the hearth, pressing his shoulders against the fire's warmth. "Miss Bennett," he panted, breath steaming. "My pa's legs compound probably won't walk for weeks. They've set a splint, but he's in agony. I had to ride light to get help." Claire rushed to his side. "My stars, do they need anything?" Luke shook his head, jaw tight. "I sent 2 men to fetch Dr. McAllister in town. Should arrive before midnight. For now, Ma and I will manage the ranch." "You mind the workshop?" Claire exhaled. "I will. Don't you worry." He nodded, but his brow furrowed. "This storm, the wind's gotten worse. Wolves might threaten the herds." Claire's gaze darted to the lantern-lit windows. "Stay here. I'll check the workshop. Make sure the door's secure." He offered a fleeting smile. "Thank you. You're braver than you think." Outside, Claire stomped through ankle-deep snow toward Carson's saddle and tack. Moonlight glimmered on icy eaves. When she reached the shop, its plank walls dusted in white, she tested the lock. Solid. Inside, the familiar scent of leather and beeswax met her. Dowels of hides hung from pegs. Tools lined a pegboard. A half-assembled saddle lay atop a workbench. Claire lit the lantern and moved to a squat stool. She flipped a dusty ledger on the bench and scanned entries, harness repairs, tack orders, account balances. She marked the day's work, 2 bridles and a set of stirrups. Organized payday wages for the ranch hands. Already she felt the rhythm inventory pricing, customer names flowing into a pattern she understood. A sudden crash of wind rattled a shingle loose on the roof. Snow flurried through the gaps. Claire braced the lantern and hunted for a nail box. When she returned, she started hammering a board in place. With each strike, the world beyond dimmed. The lantern's glow and the scent of cedar staves cocooned her. Deep into the night, Louise Carson's voice drifted from outside Luke. "Luke, it's me. Are you in there?" Claire hurried to the door. She cracked it open. A squat woman, warm scarf wrapped around her neck, leaned against the frame. "I brought fresh blankets for Pa," she said. "He's cold in that wagon." "I'll carry them in," Claire offered, hefting a bundle. "How is he?" Louise shook her head. "Dr. McAllister fixed him right enough, but it's a rough break. Surgery's weeks away. Pa's tough, but your presence calms him." Claire nodded. "I'll make sure the workshop stove burns through the night for you if you need shelter." Louise's eyes glistened. "Thank you, child. The wind makes even 2 crying babies howl." They shared a small laugh, then Louise retreated into the swirling snow. Claire returned to her stool, but her mind raced with every candlelit rhythm of frontier, life-risk care community. In those moments, she realized her role stretched beyond the schoolhouse. She was part of a fragile tapestry of people bound by necessity and goodwill. By dawn, the storm had eased to a gentle hiss. Claire trudged back to Redwood Inn, feet heavy but heart lighter. Martha greeted her with a steaming bowl of oatmeal. "You did well," Martha praised. "Pa Carson rests and his ranch is secure." Mr. Thompson rode in with the constable. Claire accepted the bowl with a grateful nod. "This land tests every soul it meets." Martha placed a motherly hand on her shoulder. "But it rewards kindness and courage just as well. You'll find your place here." Claire met Martha's gaze. Amid the swirling snow and raw wind, she realized that Alder Creek was not merely a backdrop for her new life. It was her community, her anchor. And in that knowledge, the frontier transformed from a wilderness to a home. Sunlight filtered weakly through heavy clouds as Claire Bennett stood before the schoolhouse door, clutching her satchel. Snow lay soft in thick drifts along the walk, but the path had been cleared by diligent townsfolk. Today marked her first official day of teaching at Alder Creek School No. 7. She inhaled the crisp air, squared her shoulders, and pushed inside. The classroom was already warming from a small wood stove in the corner. 7 children, an even mix of boys and girls ages 6 to 12, sat on benches carved by local craftsmen. Their wide eyes followed her with curiosity. At the front, and Harold Thompson placed a lantern on his desk and nodded. "Miss Bennett, the floor is yours." Claire smiled, voice clear and confident. "Good morning, class. I'm Miss Bennett, your new teacher. Today we'll begin by learning the alphabet and basic arithmetic." She wrote each letter carefully on her chalkboard, the white dust glimmering like frost. The children echoed her every stroke in unison. ABC, Their young voices formed a delicate chorus that warmed Claire's heart more than any stove. Halfway through arithmetic drills, a sudden boom rattled the windows. All heads turned as the building trembled. Claire's pulse quickened. A second crashed stone and wood on the roof. A child cried out. Thompson jumped up. "Stay calm," he commanded. He dashed to the door, yanked it open, and the hallway filled with a blast of frigid wind. Claire ushered the children under their desks. Laughter drifted from outside at first, but then the sound of horses screaming in panic pierced the hush. Thompson returned, face ashen. "It's a runaway carriage heading down Main Street, losing control." Claire's breath caught. The schoolhouse stood at the crest of a gentle hill. Below, the incline led straight into the center of town. If that carriage crashed near the mercantile, children gathering at recess could be in grave danger. She vaulted over benches, flinging open the front windows to hear the blast of hooves and screech of wood on ice. Outside, chaos reigned. A carriage, its driver fallen, hurtled down the street, passengers screaming. Horses thundered, using every ounce of strength to obey the shattered reins. Townsfolk scattered fearful collateral. Claire turned to Thompson. "We have to warn them? Stop the children from going outside." He nodded, and she rushed back to her desk. "Children, remain under your desks until I say otherwise." The children complied, small hands gripping legs of oak desks. Claire took a deep breath and strode back to the windowsill. She spotted Luke Carson racing toward the schoolhouse, rifle slung across his back. Behind him came Mr. Thompson's eldest son, a stout boy of 14, valiantly waving a red blanket. Claire pressed her palms against the cold window glass. The runaway carriage veered past the general store, its horses lurching left, smashing into a hitching post. Bolts of wood splintered, and tumble of debris cascaded into the street. Claire winced as the driver's seat snapped free. The driver fell to the snow but scrambled back up, trying to regain control. Just then, Luke Carson appeared in her line of sight. He sprinted to the center of the street, rifle at the ready. Horses snorted and whinnied, panic-stricken by the jolt of wood and sled bells. Luke dropped into a crouch and fired a single shot into the air, not at the horses but to startle them. The crack of his rifle boomed across the snowy hollow. Wild eyes of the horses locked onto him. Claire held her breath. The younger horse veered off, pressing the reins into case as it galloped toward the saloon. The lead horse responded, his muscles straining. Then, in a ballet of trust between man and animal, the lead horse slowed, flicking its head toward Luke. The other horse followed its lead. Both animals veered off the main path away from the town center. Seizing the moment, Luke dashed forward, yanking up the reins and using his body weight to steer the beasts. He guided them onto a side street past the stables and toward an open field where no civilians stood. Claire exhaled a tremor of relief. Within moments, the carriage skidded into a soft snowbank, the coachman tumbling forward, but landing safely. Luke crouched in the field, gently reining in the animals crouched in the snow to calm them. In the classroom, 8 pairs of eyes widened in admiration. Claire tapped her desk bell twice. "You may come out now." The children scrambled from beneath their desks, cheeks flushed from fear and excitement. Harold Thompson shook his head, a proud grin flickering beneath his mustache. "One would think Luke Carson rode in from the cavalry," he said to Claire. Claire returned his gaze with profound gratitude. "He's our hero." The day's school session resumed with hushed whispers of Luke's bravery. Claire returned to teaching, but now with an added sparkle in the children's eyes. At noon, she dismissed them early to let them witness the townspeople's gratitude. She followed Thompson outside and found Luke standing beside his horses, patting their flanks. Townsfolk gathered in a loose semicircle. Blacksmith Hale, the saloon keeper, Gina Morales, rancher, June Harmon, and they clapped and cheered. The coachman approached Luke and offered a silver coin purse. "Thank you, Mr. Carson. You saved us all today." Luke shrugged. "Just doing what needed doing." Claire approached and the crowd parted. "Thank you," she said, "on behalf of everyone and our children." He tipped his hat and gave her a small smile. "Miss Bennett, it was my pleasure." That evening, Claire braced herself against an ache of pride and fatigue as she penned the lesson plans by lantern light. Across the parlor, Martha Jennings hummed a lullaby to her youngest traveler. Claire reflected on the day's events, how swiftly peril met the unwary in these lands, and how fellowship's summer houses crackling fires. Courageous neighbors became the bulwark against nature's fury. Her draft of tranquil routine had been shattered by runaway horses and a fallen teacher, but the heart of Alder Creek had rallied. The children learned not only letters and sums, but the strength of community. In that quiet glow, Claire realized she had found her calling, here not just to educate, but to bind hearts together through every snowstorm, every danger, and every new dawn, hinting at hope. With winter's grip barely loosening, Alder Creek consolidated its newfound unity. The following Monday morning, Claire Bennett arrived at the schoolhouse to the murmurs of eager children. The day's lessons, reading comprehension geography of the American West, flowed smoothly until the late afternoon hush was broken by the hoofbeats of Luke Carson's horse outside. Claire stepped to the window as he dismounted on the schoolyard's edge, the reins draped over one arm. "Miss Bennett," he called, voice low, "I have news about those threatening letters you received." Claire's heart tightened. A week earlier, she had discovered an unmarked envelope pinned to her bedpost. "Some secrets are better buried," the letter warned in cramped handwriting. It had rattled her with its implication of unseen danger beyond wolves and runaway carriages. "What is it?" she asked, brushing a loose curl behind her ear. Luke produced a folded sheet of ledger paper, its edges damp from his gloves. "I checked the Carson tack receipts. Someone was ordering lamp oil and volatile chemicals, not for lanterns, but for more destructive use. My foreman Walt Fox made those orders." Luke's eyes darkened. "He admits he bought them. Says he was angry at my father, and at you he suspected you'd uncover something." Claire's blood ran cold. Walt Fox, formerly trusted to manage the ranch stables, was now unmasked as a potential arsonist and saboteur. "Why would he think I'd uncover anything?" she whispered. "Because you organized those old receipts and found evidence of suspicious purchases after the barn fire that killed your namesake, Cora Blythe." Luke sighed. "Fox thought you'd publicize the truth." Claire's jaw clenched. "He's the third twist in this story. First, I survived bandits. Second, I learned Morgan hid his family secret. Now Fox threatens me for exposing past sins." She pressed her palms to the window frame. "We need proof before accusing him." Luke nodded. "We'll get it." He glanced at the school's group of children, now gathered at the fence, curious. "Not in front of them." "Meet me tonight at the Redwood Inn's back porch," Claire inhaled sharply. "All right, I'll be there after locking up." Luke offered a determined nod and mounted his saddle, then rode off along the snow-packed road. That night, Claire slipped out of the inn under a new moon's thin sliver. Snow sifted silently through fir branches, muffling her boots. She reached the inn's rear and found Luke waiting half-hidden by a smoking chimney. "You found anything else?" he whispered, eyes scanning the night. Claire produced a small leather pouch. "I copied Fox's ledger entries from the tack office, dates, item, descriptions, quantities. Notice the spikes in lamp oil and chemical solvents on nights coinciding with phantom fires reported at outlying barns." Luke examined the entries by the lantern's glow. "He tried to burn the ranch twice year before last, and last month, both saved by quick work long after your accident. He used straw and oil to ignite dry hay." Claire shivered. "He admitted it to his men, but no one believed him until we dug these up." Luke folded the papers. "We need to confront him, publicly, tomorrow at the town meeting." Claire hesitated. "We'd better be ready. He's dangerous." Luke offered a half smile. "So are we." He lifted her hand, brushing thumb against the leather pouch. "Together." The next morning, Alder Creek convened in the mercantile's loft, an informal town hall. Ranchers, merchants, and homesteaders filled the wooden benches. At the front, Mr. Thompson called the gathering to order. Claire and Luke stepped forward, solemn faces. Claire presented the copied entries. These ledgers show deliberate orders of flammable materials timed with suspicious fires on Carson property. Walt Fox admitted ordering them. "We believe he intentionally sabotaged the ranch and posed a threat to me when I uncovered his actions." A murmur rose through the crowd. Shock, indignation, disbelief. Walt Fox, tall and gaunt, rose from his seat at the back. His angular cheekbones and cold eyes betrayed fury. "That's slander," he barked. "I only bought lantern oil necessary for my rounds. I never harmed your fiancée, Miss Bennett." "She's a stranger here." Luke stepped forward, voice steady. "You told your men you bought those chemicals for a show to scare the boss and his bride." "They heard you say so." Fox's face twisted. "I said nothing of the sort. You're twisting my words." Mr. Thompson pounded a gavel. "Order. We have testimony from Fox's own ranch hands. If he misled the town with fires, we must decide consequences." Fox lunged at Claire, spittle flecking his lips. "You city folk think you know everything," Luke intercepted him. The two squared off in the rustic loft, the entire town watching. Fox's fist flew. Luke caught it and shoved him against a post. Fox reeled, lost balance, and crashed into a bench, knocking over a crate. A lamp toppled, its oil spilling and igniting an ember. Flames licked around the crate. Panic erupted as townsfolk screamed and leapt aside. Luke grabbed a wool blanket and smothered the fire while Claire shepherded children from the loft. By the time the sheriff arrived, summoned by Martha's quick thinking, the fire was out, and Fox lay subdued, handcuffed by his own men. Days later, after Fox was bound for trial in the county seat, the town began to heal. The shock of his betrayal gave way to gratitude for Luke's courage, Claire's tenacity, and the unity forged in crisis. At the festival celebrating the thawing of winter, pink blossoms unfurled in redbud groves planted beside the schoolhouse, a testament to new beginnings. Claire and Luke stood beneath a wooden arch of blooms as villagers gathered for dance and song. Harold Thompson raised a glass. To Miss Bennett, whose strength and compassion taught our children and our town the meaning of community, cheers rolled through the crowd. Luke took Claire's hand. "You've done more than teach letters. You taught us to face danger together." Claire smiled, the sunlight catching tears in her eyes. "And you saved more than horses, you saved my hope." Under the arch of spring blossoms, they shared their first kiss, an unspoken vow of partnership, built on trials endured and secrets unveiled. Behind them, laughter and fiddle music drifted through the warming air. In Alder Creek, the frontier's brutal beauty remained, but so did the bonds of its people, stronger than any storm, steadfast against any sabotage. And for Claire Bennett and Luke Carson, the wild land had become home, a place where love and courage could take root and flourish in even the harshest soil. The blossoms of spring had barely taken hold when Claire Bennett awoke to a fluttering knock at her chamber door. Morning light dappled the floor, and the scent of fresh pine cones wafted in. She opened the door to find Martha Jennings, Redwood Inn's ever-vigilant steward, holding a folded newspaper. "Miss Bennett, you'll want to see this," Martha said, concern creasing her brow. "A notice from the county. Walt Fox's trial is set for Monday, but someone's petitioned for leniency, claiming he acted under duress." Claire's chest tightened. "Duress from whom?" Martha shook her head. "No name, just vague hints of threats. You remember that anonymous letter you received?" Claire nodded slowly, recalling the cramped handwriting. "Some secrets are best buried." It had chilled her blood. Clearly, whoever sent it hoped to derail justice for Fox and bury the truth of the barn fire. "Keep your wits about you," Martha advised. "If someone's pulling strings, they may strike again." After breakfast, Claire made her way to Luke's workshop, determined to share the news. She found him at the lathe carving a decorative inlay for a custom saddle. His face brightened when he saw her, but concern flickered at the newspaper in her hand. "They're trying to free Fox," Claire said. "Someone's claiming he acted under duress." Luke set the tool aside and approached, voice low. "Then we need to learn who's petitioning for him. The only person who'd benefit from his release would be someone tied to the original barnfire conspiracy, someone who doesn't want Fox talking." Claire's mind raced. Who among their circle might still fear exposure? She thought of Donovan Braith, the ranch owner whose wife Cora Blythe died in the blaze. He had confided his guilt to Claire, but she trusted in his remorse. She thought of Morgan Hale, the quiet saddler, whose father died in that same fire. His sorrow had bound him to secrecy. Both bore motive for wanting the truth to remain hidden, but neither seemed capable of orchestrating a legal campaign. "We'll check the petition records at the town clerk's office," Luke concluded. "Meet me there after supper." All afternoon, Claire taught her pupils spelling and geography, but her thoughts drifted to the petition. When the final bell rang, she gathered her coat and walked the snow-dusted path to the clerk's office. A two-story frame building with a for-sale notice on the door from last fall, but it remained the repository of town records. Inside, Assistant Clerk Madge Reed looked up from her ledger. "Miss Bennett here to see the petition." Claire nodded and explained. Madge retrieved a file from a locked drawer, a single page strapped with wax and a red ribbon. "This was filed anonymously," Madge said. "No signature, just a note in a careful hand. Fox was coerced by powers that be. Mercy for the wrongly accused." Claire examined the note. The handwriting was neat round loops and precise slants, unlike the hurried scrawl of the threats she'd received. The envelope was lined with pale blue paper, uncommon in these parts. "Thank you, Madge," Claire said gently. You've been most helpful." As she left, she slipped the petition into her satchel, careful not to crease the wax seal. In the fading light, Claire arrived at Luke's workshop. He was sharpening a rasp, the rasp of metal on stone echoing in the crisp evening air. He looked up when she entered, and she laid out the petition and threat letter on the workbench. "This paper stock, pale blue, came from Donovan Braith's ranch office," Claire said. "He keeps fine stationery on hand for business." In the handwriting. I've seen it in his letters. Luke inhaled sharply. "You think he's behind this?" Claire nodded. "He's desperate. He tried to protect his reputation by rejecting me at the station. He spread rumors, hired me to handle his ledgers, yet he's fought every revelation about the barn fire. If he thinks freeing Fox will bury the whole affair, he might be using his influence." Luke's jaw tightened. "We need to confirm. Old Mr. Braith's trustee, Mrs. Willoughby, might know who signed for stationery orders last month." Claire bit her lip. "She's well connected. I can visit her tomorrow privately." Luke laid a steady hand on her shoulder. "We'll confront him together, not alone. For now, lock these documents in the safe at Redwood. And I'll escort you back." Claire gave a small, grateful nod. The shadows lengthened as they left the shop side by side. The next morning, Claire donned her warmest cloak and walked to Braith Ranch under a brittle squash-tree. The driveway wound past fading apple trees, their branches bare but for clustered lichen. She paused at the front porch of Donovan Braith's grand house, a two-story frame with broad windows overlooking the paddock. Mrs. Winifred Willoughby, the trustee, greeted her, a slender woman whose steel-gray hair was coiled atop her head, her posture immaculate. "Miss Bennet, what brings you here so early?" Mrs. Willoughby asked, voice smooth as shawl silk. Claire bowed politely. "Good morning, Mrs. Willoughby. I hope you can help me. I'm researching a petition filed for the release of Walt Fox. Fox admitted to ordering suspicious chemicals. The petition was written on fine pale blue stationery. I wondered if the ranch office could confirm recent orders of such supplies." Mrs. Willoughby's eyes flickered. She gestured inside. "Come in." In the formal drawing room, Claire settled in a cushioned chair while Mrs. Willoughby fetched ledger books. Family order logs were immaculate pages annotated in Donovan's precise hand. Claire and Mrs. Willoughby scanned entries, ink quills, stationery, then a bulk order of pale blue paper 2 weeks prior. "See here," Mrs. Willoughby said, pointing to the ledger. 50 sheaves addressed to the foreman. Signed D. Braith. Claire's pulse thrummed. And the hand, she produced the petition. "This handwriting matches." Mrs. Willoughby's composure cracked for an instant. "Donovan has always been particular." She cleared her throat. "I'll speak with him. Don't mention this to others." Claire Rowe's voice firm. "Thank you, Mrs. Willoughby. This evidence may help ensure justice." That evening, Donovan Braith stood on the veranda, the sun retreating behind distant peaks. Claire approached with measured steps. Luke hovered nearby, silent support. "Miss Bennet," Donovan said, voice guarded. Luke tipped his hat. Claire held out the petition and ledger. "These show you ordered that stationery likely used for the petition to free Fox." Why? Donovan's shoulders sagged. I believed Fox was a scapegoat." His voice cracked. "I convinced myself that if Fox served time, Whispers would die and my grief might find peace. I didn't intend to hinder justice." Claire's eyes softened. "Your grief can't justify coercion." Fox admitted his wrongs. Why keep him from atonement? Donovan's gaze dropped. "I was cowardly, scared that truth would consume me. I thought if the man went free, I could bury the past." Luke stepped forward. "But you tried to manipulate the law." "That's worse." Donovan closed his eyes, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I know, and I'm prepared to face the consequences." Claire nodded. "We'll present this to the town meeting. Fox's trial will be fair now." At Monday's trial, Claire and Luke took the stand. Claire testified about the ledger of Fox's own admissions in Donovan's petition. Murmurs filled the courtroom. Donovan rose to confess his petition, his motive, and his remorse. He surrendered his position on the town council and accepted fines for misconduct. When the judge dismissed the petition, Fox bowed his head. The courtroom exhaled a collective relief. Justice served, truth revealed. Donovan Braith's reputation bore a new weight. He had owned his mistakes. Weeks later, under a canopy of budding chestnut blossoms, Alder Creek hosted its first spring fair. Children laughed, families picnicked, and a fiddler played a gentle reel. Claire and Luke walked side by side, the past shadows replaced by hope. Luke bowed, offering his arm. Claire took it. They paused beneath the blossoms. To beginnings built on honesty, Luke said. Claire smiled, eyes shining. And to the courage to face our past. They strolled forward as townsfolk cheered two souls united by trials, confronted a community made stronger by truth and a frontier forever transformed by their steadfast hearts. Summer's high sun perched above Ardon's Creek when the harmonica's mournful note drifted across the dusty corral. Claire Bennett leaned against the fence of Carson's saddle and tacked dust motes dancing in golden light around her. She watched as Luke Carson guided a prize Mustang through intricate dressage patterns, the horse's muscles rippling beneath a coat sleek as obsidian. The pair moved in perfect harmony, man and beast attuned by trust. After the demonstration, townsfolk murmured their approval. Rancher June Harmon tipped her Stetson. "That mare's a wonder, Luke." Morgan Hale stood nearby with folded arms, nodded in respect. Claire approached her day's errand set aside. Luke dismounted, wiping sweat from his brow. "Evening, Miss Bennett," he greeted, skin sun-kissed. "It's time to prepare for the festival's grand finale, the equestrian showcase. Are you ready?" Claire smiled, a voice warm. "I wouldn't miss it. The children will be thrilled." As twilight deepened, lanterns flickered along Main Street. The annual Frontier Jubilee drew crowds from surrounding homesteads. Booths lined the boardwalk, candied apples glistened, hand-sewn quilts draped over railings, and a local band tuned fiddles and banjos in the saloon's open doorway. Claire guided a group of wide-eyed pupils past the stalls, their chatter bubbling with excitement for the evening's parade. The mayor's daughter tripped near a barrel racer's pony, and Claire caught her just before a hoof thundered past. The child's face paled. Claire knelt to steady her. A hush fell until Luke's voice rang out triumphantly as he and the Mustang reappeared from the far end of the street, galloping in perfect unison. The Jubilee crowd burst into cheers, the moment's tension dissolving in applause. After the showcase, Claire ventured toward the edge of the fairgrounds, drawn by the scent of hay and fresh rain. She found herself at the side paddock where Donovan Braith pressed a gentle hand to the Mustang's neck. His silhouette, lithe against trailing lantern light, seemed more vulnerable than the stern figure of months before. Claire approached softly. "Donovan, thank you for sponsoring the youth riding competition. It means a great deal to the children." He turned to gaze slow and contemplative. "I wanted to give back for the pain my losses caused," his voice caught. "Seeing the farm hands teach their own children to ride. It's healing." The Mustang nickered and Donovan patted its coat. "You brought that to me, Miss Bennett, healing and hope." Claire met his earnest eyes. "We all deserve second chances." The words echoed the town's journey from tragedy to trust. Behind them, the festival's laughter swelled. Late that night, under a tapestry of silver stars, Claire walked the quiet streets home. Only the distant hoot of an owl broke the stillness. Snowmelt seeped into ruts along the boardwalk, but the air carried the sweet perfume of wild rose and pine from nearby hills. As she passed Beaver Creek Bridge, a figure stepped from the shadows. Walt Fox, gaunt and hollow-eyed, still confined to town. His wrist bore faded marks from his time in custody. He halted before her, voice trembling. "Miss Bennett, I'm sorry." Claire braced herself. "Fox, what is it?" His shoulders shook. I I came to say thanks for not abandoning me. When the trial turned, people called for me to ride into the fire. Some wanted me hanged. But you," he swallowed, "you stood for truth and mercy." Claire's gaze softened despite his past deeds. Justice and mercy must go hand in hand. "You confessed, you paid your dues." "That took courage." He nodded, tears shining. "I want to start anew. I have a cousin in Helena who needs a hand on her homestead. She'll take me in." Claire offered a small gift, a map folded from her satchel. "Here's the route, and if you need a reference, call on Luke Carson. He saved lives, and you." She turned to leave, but Fox called softly, "Will you ever forgive me?" Claire paused, her boots echoing on wet wood. "I forgive what you've done, Walt. The past cannot be changed, but the future is yours to shape." By midsummer, the sunflower crop near the town's edge swayed golden beneath storm-swept skies. Claire and Luke surveyed the fields from atop a low rise. The blossoms seemed to stand guard, sentinels of abundance and optimism. "You've settled in well," Luke observed, loosening his saddle girth. "The children adore you, and I've never seen the workshop so busy." Claire followed his gaze to Morgan's repair yard beyond the fence where Morgan Hale oversaw apprentices carving intricate tooling patterns. The community had rallied around his craft demand, far exceeding his solo capacity. Claire laced her fingers through Luke's. This town has become my home. Between the school, the inn, the festival, my life's richer than I dreamed. Luke smiled, lifting her hand to his lips. And yours has enriched mine. A distant rumble heralded a coming storm. They tucked arms and hurried toward the inn where Martha Jennings awaited on the porch, lantern raised. Storm's rolling in, Martha called. Brace yourselves, I've stocked grub and split wood. Inside, the fire roared in the parlor as townsfolk gathered for supper, huckleberry stew and fresh cornbread, laughter mingling with thunder outside. Claire took her seat at a long table beside the hearth. Donovan Brace sat across, offering her a kind nod. During dessert, Harold Thompson tapped the spoon against his glass. To Miss Bennett and Luke Carson, architects of a community reborn. The room erupted in applause. Claire caught Luke's eye. He winked. In the early dawn of the next day, dawn's pastel glow revealed the aftermath of the storm, branches strewn across roads, puddles, where low spots had held rain. Claire stepped into the street to deliver fresh chalk and slates to the school. At the corner, Walt Fox appeared, suitcase in hand. He wore a wide-brimmed hat, sun-faded to straw. Miss Bennett, he greeted, tipping his hat. I'm headed west. He unfurled a small canvas bag of homemade jerky. For the journey, Claire accepted it with warmth. Travel safely, Walt. May your new life be better than this one. He nodded, voice earnest. Thanks to you, it already is. With that, he strode down the road toward Helena's distant horizon. Weeks later, the school year wound down and Claire prepared her final lessons. At the last assembly, the children presented her with gifts. A framed sketch of the schoolhouse drawn by the eldest boy, a braid of wildflowers by the youngest, and a small, leather-bound book inscribed, For Claire Bennett, Teacher, Friend, Hero. Tears pricked her eyes as she hugged each student farewell. Luke stood beside her, handing her the book. Don't worry, he whispered. I've signed you on for next year. Rumor has it you're officially part of the town now. Claire laughed through tears. I wouldn't have it any other way. That evening, under a harvest moon, Alder Creek held a farewell bonfire for summer travelers. Flames licked skyward. Voices soared in camp songs. Claire and Luke sat side by side, shoulders brushing, hearts aligned. As the last spark faded, Luke rose, drawing Claire to her feet. There's one more celebration I'd like to propose. He produced a small velvet pouch. From it, he withdrew a simple silver band, engraved with interlocking tack patterns in a sunflower motif. Claire's breath caught. Luke dropped to one knee. Claire Bennett, he began, voice steady despite the night's chill. You came here seeking a second chance. You taught, you healed, you stood for truth. You made this place home. Will you make my life your home forever? Claire's eyes shimmered, the flicker of firelight dancing in them. Her voice caught. Yes, Luke, yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and they embraced as the townsfolk cheered. Under the wide Montana sky, two souls found their place, rooted in community, bound by love, ready to face every new season together. The first hints of autumn drifted into Alder Creek on a crisp breeze, rustling golden leaves through the boardwalks. Claire Bennett stood beneath the schoolhouse's ivy-draped porch, watching her students file in for their first day of the new term. They greeted her with bright smiles, some sporting homemade scarves knitted by Martha Jennings, others clutching fresh slates and chalk. Claire inhaled the cool air, recalling her own journey from a frightened mail-order bride to a beloved teacher and partner in this vibrant community. Inside the classroom, brimmed with new faces, children of ranchers and storekeepers eager to learn reading, history, and arithmetic. At the front, the chalkboard gleamed clean, awaiting lessons on American civics knowledge, Claire believed essential for an engaged frontier populace. Among her pupils sat Morgan Hale's daughter, tiny and solemn, while Donovan Braith's nephew squirmed behind a row of desks. Even Walt Fox's orphaned niece had found a spot, her wide eyes reflecting hope. As Claire began the day's lesson, the responsibilities of citizenship, a sharp rap sounded at the door. Harold Thompson's voice called, Miss Bennett, your presence is requested at the town hall. County officials have arrived. Claire exchanged a glance with Thompson, who nodded solemnly. She dismissed the children to silent reading and followed him into the corridor. In the town hall's grand chamber, a former lodge transformed into courtroom, three stern-faced county commissioners sat behind a raised dais. Their distinguished attire contrasted with the frontier's rugged charm. Claire and Thompson stepped before them, Morgan and Luke at their sides. Miss Bennett, the lead commissioner, began, "We've reviewed your efforts here, your lessons, your leadership during crises, and we wish to appoint you as the first county superintendent of education for this region." Claire's breath caught. "County superintendent," she echoed. The commissioner nodded. "We believe your dedication merits this role. You will oversee school districts, coordinate teacher training, and ensure standards across the frontier." A wave of pride and responsibility washed through Claire. She glanced at Luke, his expression ablaze with pride. Donovan and Martha beamed from the audience. Claire bowed, voice steady. "I am honored. I accept." Applause filled the chamber, echoing like church bells. The frontier's future, once mired in isolation, now held unity forged by shared purpose. Claire Bennett's vision had blossomed beyond a single classroom, becoming the cornerstone of education for an entire county. That evening, the community gathered at Carson's Fields for a harvest supper. Tables groaned with roasted game cornbread and apple preserves. Lanterns strung between posts gave the gathering a warm glow beneath the gathering dusk. Claire, newly appointed superintendent, stood beside Luke, listening to ranchers discuss fencing regulations and the promise of a new schoolhouse in the neighboring valley. "It's all thanks to you," June Harmon said, raising a mug. "Education will keep our children here, give them opportunities beyond these hills." Claire smiled, glancing at the children chasing fireflies across the stubble fields. "It's your support that makes it possible." Luke squeezed her hand. "I always knew you were something extraordinary." Late that night, Claire lingered by the stables where Morgan Hale tended his workshop's forge. The scent of hot iron and oak smoke filled the air. Morgan paused his hammering and offered Claire a heated horseshoe spatula. "Here, keep your hands warm." Claire took it gratefully. "Thank you, Morgan. I couldn't have done any of this without your encouragement." Morgan studied her quietly. "You brought out the best in us all." He lifted the horseshoe, examining its curve. "It's time I expanded my workshop, hire an apprentice or two. Business is booming." Claire's heart swelled. "I'll have a talk with the county clerk tomorrow about formalizing trade schools. You deserve recognition as a master saddler." Morgan allowed a rare smile. "Then the next generation of craftsmen will carry on our legacy." The next morning brought a gentle frost. Claire and Luke rode together to inspect the new site for the county's second schoolhouse. They followed the creek's bend to a plateau where autumn's first gold-topped trees stood guard. Fishermen's shacks dotted the shore, their nets draped and drying. "This spot has good drainage," Claire observed, "and children can gather firewood in winter." Luke nodded, "Plus it's equidistant from 3 ranching communities." They dismounted and walked hand in hand across the grasses. Claire knelt, tracing fallen maple leaves. Education here will shape the frontier's future farmers, ranchers, and traders alike. Luke placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're a pioneer of a different kind." They surveyed the horizon where farmland melded into timbered wilderness. In that shared moment, they saw not just a building, but the promise of generations whose lives would flourish under Claire's guidance, and whose hearts would remember the courage it took to sow knowledge in untamed soil. A pale frost clung to the edges of windows as Claire Bennett rose before dawn to ride with Luke Carson to the new schoolhouse site. The autumn air was sharp, each breath bursting into mist. On their horses, they followed the creek's ribbon through low-lying fay. The world hushed, except for hoofbeats and water's gentle murmur. "Look at this light," Claire murmured, pulling her cloak tighter. "The valley awakens in gold." Luke nodded, guiding his mount onto a grassy rise overlooking the budding construction. The schoolhouse's foundation stones lay neatly arranged, and a dozen townsfolk, Martha Jennings among them, stood ready with shovels. Morgan Hale directed the placement of timbers, ensuring the walls would be square and true. As they dismounted, a sudden clatter echoed from the tree line, a horse's panicked whinny. Claire's heart leaped. She and Luke drew closer to the fence as a chestnut mare burst into view, her flanks heaving in fear. A figure rushed after the animal. Walt Fox had a skewed desperation in his stride. Back, Claire called, but Fox ignored her. The mare skidded on dew-soaked grass, nostrils flaring. Fox lunged for the reins, stumbling, then thrust his arms around the beast's neck. The horse reared, Fox clinging on. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Without hesitation, Luke drew his lariat from his saddle horn and dashed forward in a smooth arc, the rope whistling through the air. It looped around the mare's midsection, and with the practiced tug of a cowboy, Luke brought the horse's weight forward onto its front legs, easing its balance. Fox slid to the ground in a cloud of grass and dirt rolling clear of the hooves. Claire raced to his side, followed by Morgan. Fox lay panting, shock and relief mingling in his eyes. Claire knelt. "Are you hurt?" He pressed a hand to his side. "Just shaken. Thank you, both of you." Luke helped Fox to his feet. "You're welcome. These lands demand courage and caution." Fox straightened, offering a hollow nod. "I suppose I needed both." Meanwhile, townsfolk resumed their work, invigorated by the rescue. Claire looked at Luke, gratitude shining. "You saved him." Luke shrugged. "Anyone would have. We're all family here." As the sun climbed, the foundation work resumed in earnest. Claire and Luke spoke with Morgan about beam lengths and window placement, while Fox gathered straw to mix into mortar under Martha's direction. By midday, the school's walls rose chest high, each stone set by hands united in purpose. That afternoon, Claire returned to the classroom for an urgent county meeting on resource allocation. At the town hall, heated debate flared over budgets for schools versus road maintenance. Some ranchers argued for improved ferries across Beaver Creek. Others pressed for educational funds. Claire listened poised, then rose to speak. "Fellow citizens," she began, "voice measured, our children's futures hinge on access to knowledge. A safe road is essential, but what use is a well-paved trail if our youth lack the skills to navigate life? Education equips them to build better infrastructure and to thrive beyond these hills." Her words settled over the room like a benediction. Heads nodded, murmurs of agreement grew. When the clerk tallied votes, a majority favored allocating sufficient funds to complete both the schoolhouse and critical road improvements. Claire exhaled relief as Leon Harper, a prominent rancher, stood to commend her. "Your vision guided our choice," he said. "Well argued, Miss Bennett." Evening brought a hush over Alder Creek as residents gathered at the partially completed schoolhouse for a community potluck. Tables groaned under homemade dishes, pumpkin soup, venison stew, cornbread, and spiced cider. Claire moved among friends and neighbors, savoring the warm camaraderie emanating from smiling faces. Morgan approached, placing a slab of honey-glazed ham on her plate. "For our superintendent," he said with a wink. Luke joined, handing her a mug of cider. To new milestones, Claire clinked mugs with them. To every helping hand. In the flicker of lantern light, families shared stories of frontier challenges, overcome lost cattle, found barns rebuilt, stronger storms weathered. Children chased each other across the yard's rough planks, their laughter echoing a promise of resilience and hope. Later, under the schoolhouse's half-erect roof, Claire and Luke stood alone near the edge of the lantern-lit structure. The scent of fresh pine beams mingled with chilly air. "It's coming together," Luke said, running a hand along a joist. "Tomorrow we raise the rafters." Claire rested her hand on the rafters. "I can't believe how far we've come since my first day hunted by bandits, threatened by arson, swept by storms. Yet here we stand." Luke turned to her. "You stood." She smiled softly. "No. We stood together." She placed her hand over his. "And I wouldn't trade a single trial for the community we've built." They shared a quiet embrace beneath the stars, gleaming through the open rafters, silent witnesses to the frontier's promise and fragility. Winter's final thaw arrived with the gentle drip of melting icicles and the first crocus pushing through the thawed earth. Claire Bennett stood at the threshold of the newly completed Valley View schoolhouse, its pale pine siding gleaming in the rising sun. A ribbon of blue cloth stretched between two sturdy posts, ready for the dedication ceremony. Townsfolk gathered, ranchers, merchants, homesteaders, and children, bundled in wool scarves, breath misting in the crisp morning air. Luke Carson joined Claire at the ribbon's end, the silver superintendent's badge pinned proudly to his lapel at her side. Donovan Braith stood nearby, hands clasped, his eyes bright with pride. Morgan Hale, soot-smudged from final woodworking, grinned beneath his brimmed hat. Even Walt Fox, now free and heading west to start anew, had returned to witness the school's opening proof of community forgiveness and fresh beginnings. Harold Thompson stepped forward as master of ceremonies. "Friends, we dedicate Valley View Schoolhouse to the promise of education, community, and the enduring spirit of Alder Creek." May its halls echo with laughter, learning, and the courage to face every new dawn. He cut the ribbon with a ceremonial flourish of silver scissors. Children poured inside, gasping at polished floors and clean chalkboards. Their teacher pointed to sunlit windows overlooking the creek below. Laughter followed as they raced to claim front row seats. Claire and Luke shared a satisfied smile. This was their legacy. After the ribbon cutting, an impromptu procession moved toward Redwood Inn for a celebratory luncheon. Martha Jennings presided over steaming platters of roast venison, fresh biscuits, and huckleberry pie. Glasses clinked in toasts to our superintendent Claire Bennett, to frontier education, to the bonds that carry us through every storm. Claire, flushed with gratitude, rose to speak. This school stands because of each of you. Every shovel of earth turned, every log set in place, every lantern lit on a dark night. Together we prove that knowledge and community are the greatest defenses against the wilderness outside and the doubts within. I am honored to serve you, and I promise to nurture every mind that enters these doors. Applause erupted, heartfelt and sustained. Luke squeezed her hand and met her eyes with pride that made her heart soar. As the crowd dispersed into warm sunlight, Claire stepped outside with Luke. The creek murmured below banks carpeted in fresh green. Wildflowers dotted the meadow like scattered jewels. Overhead, the sky arched in perfect blue, untroubled by storm. Luke reached into his coat and drew forth the small silver ring he had slipped onto Claire's finger under spring blossoms. He held her hand. In every season, through every challenge, you have been my constant, my teacher, my partner, my home. Claire's eyes brimmed. And you have been mine. They sealed their vows with a quiet kiss, the valley's hush bearing witness. Farther down the path, children's laughter rose in bright echoes mingling with bird song. Ardon's Creek thrived, their love story woven into its very fabric. Together, they turned toward the schoolhouse, stepping into a new chapter, one defined not by the trials behind them, but by the promise they would share with every student that knowledge, courage, and community could light the darkest frontier and cultivate hope in every heart. The valley has healed, but its scars run deep. Lives were rewritten in fire and frost, trust forged in the crucible of betrayal and redemption. A stranger's courage became this town's salvation, and a once broken soul found purpose in guiding young minds. Love was won on a battlefield of secrets, and loss carved its name into every heart that dared to stand for truth. Now, as the sunrise spills gold across thawing fields and laughter echoes from bright new classrooms, we carry those memories with us of smoky ruins, desperate pleas, and the fragile hope that blooms in the toughest soil. The cost was steep, innocence lost and old wounds reopened, and the relentless reckoning of guilt and grace. Yet from those ashes rose a community bound not by blood, but by shared conviction. What echoes of the past do you carry forward, and how might you find your own path through fire and snow?